Welcome everybody to the West of England Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. Before we start substantive business, there's some situation of the building today, and the Monitoring Officer Bob will just say a little bit about that.
Good morning, everyone. Apologies for the state of the building at the moment. We've put some arrangements in place to make sure that people are safe. So we have an opportunity for water. There's water at the front of the building. We do have conveniences available to us, which is in the next door building pasture. There are officers who are outside of this committee chamber and at reception to make sure that people are guided. The chair will take a longer than normal break to allow those people, if they want to use the facilities, and that will be at the chair's discretion depending on how the business goes today. But if there is any doubt as to what to do, the officers who are by the kitchen or in reception will be able to help you. So ask one of the officers and they'll assist you in finding your way or pointing you in the right direction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bob. So we're not expecting a practice drill today. So in the unlikely event of an alarm sounding, please follow the authority staff to the exit and collecting area. Please don't return to the building unless you're advised that it's safe to do so. And just reminding you that the meeting's being live streamed. So the second item on the agenda is the election of vice chair. Do I have any nominations? No. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any seconders?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? So could I ask for a show of hands for the election of Councillor Lucy Hodge as Vice Chair? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Councillor Hodge, for stepping into the role. Much appreciated. Are there any declarations of interest under the Localism Act? So, no, nothing for today's meeting. So then we're on to the Mayor's question and answer session. Welcome, Dan. Thank you very much for coming today in what I think is your last question and answer session before you step down. So
I'm going to miss it. Something wrong.
Well, thank you for exposing yourself to on repeated occasions. That's much appreciated. So, any questions for the Mayor, for Dan? Councillor Morgan.
I never speak, so I don't know how to do this, but I just wondered if I could ask the Metro Mayor Chair if there's any possibility of opening railway lines south from Bristol towards Midsummer Norton, etc. Towards Midsummer Norton, etc. Sorry.
There isn't really. The only one that we are planning for in Bath and North East Somerset area is Salford. So that's kind of south, I suppose, certainly south compared to the other developments. And we're also looking to the south of Bristol at Ashton Gate and St Anne's and Lockleys, I think it is. I can't remember. Is that the other one? Or, there's another. And then we've got the Henbury Loop, which is been talked about a lot in the north of Bristol. I have this fantasy that the line that used to exist and run through near my home over the Pensford Viaduct would still be there, but of course it's been very developed and houses have been built on the track and one thing and another. What a shame that happened. What a shame that we couldn't reopen that line. That would have been very exciting because as you see the traffic coming up, as you're probably familiar with, you realise that that would be an amazing opportunity, wouldn't it, to deal with the traffic and the needs of people and help the planet too. So other than that, no, that's all there is. Can I just take this call? I'm so sorry. I was just. But look,
Yeah.
look, let me put this in context. This is a very exciting time for our region in terms of, although I think you're right to ask that question, because I think that we need to make sure it benefits the whole of our region. I am really thrilled, for example, that in Bristol, where there hasn't been a new railway station since 1927, I think, Parson Street. We've had 2 railway stations now, of course, built in the last couple of years and opened, which is absolutely fantastic. We've got this Henbury Loop north of the city as well. What I should obviously say as well is that we are very close to formalising our decision about the Bristol and Portishead line, which is obviously very important too. But you're right, the area that we now need to be thinking about and future mayor needs to be considering is what's going to happen to south part of our region, or our West of England region, to build on the fantastic success that we have achieved, because it has been an amazing achievement. I think we got an award or something the other day, didn't we, for our region being the best at doing this, which is great, but we're only as good as our last success. What matters is what we achieve in the future. So I welcome your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wells, Toby.
Hi, good morning, Dan. First of all, I'm very pleased to hear about the expiry of the best value notice. I know I've pressed you in this forum on that before, but I know it's important to our region that best value notice isn't in place. So I was genuinely very happy to hear about that. I wanted to ask about the Keynsham bypass, which Helen Godwin announced on Facebook that you have cancelled the plan for some bus lanes on the Keynsham bypass. Could you clarify what the status of that project is at the moment?
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, Toby, well, I'm going incredible. Well, I'm pleased that the best value notice is sorted. That happened in, I think, the record time. That's the shortest it can possibly be. I have to be very clear that for me, I mean, clearly I welcome that because it's important for the region and that's my priority, actually, as I hope you'll understand. But it's a bit like being hit in the face and then someone saying, well, the bruising's gone. Because we got a best value notice because of the arguments that were happening publicly. And I am very frustrated by that because other mayoral combined authorities have their issues, but they don't do it in public. And we see the trouble that causes with Donald Trump, don't we? He's arguing in public that causes all sorts of bother. Of course, there are differences. That's inevitable in politics. But what you have to do is have those things behind closed doors. If you don't, then you put yourself in a position where a government might decide to serve a best value notice. So that's where it gets difficult. Sorry, I have to do this again. Okay. Thanks for your payment. The gentleman's determined, if nothing else. Right, so coming on to your second question, Toby, about the Keynsham bypass. Well, look, that was simply a decision that was made because we had a local by-election happening. So it wasn't appropriate to have that consultation. And then now we've moved into the period where we've got the mayoral election. So it's quite right that be suspended for the moment. The new mayor will have.
Sorry, has a decision been taken?
What, in perpetuity? You mean forever?
Well, I'm just confused what the decision actually is.
The decision is that the consultation has stopped and a new mayor will have to consider that. But because of the elections, it would not be appropriate to consider
so the
that.
plans haven't been cancelled?
No, I think it's for a new mayor to decide. By me, they've been cancelled for my term because that's appropriate because there are 2 elections, a by-election that's happened where the Lib Dems lost, I think, am I right in saying, and also now the mayoral election, which is coming along. So that makes sense that in that area, we don't have those consultations for now. A new mayor will decide on that.
Okay, thank you.
You don't use the name, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Any other, Councillor Weston, Mark?
Yeah, so I want to drill into your topic on this, because it seems to me the decision-making process on that did not follow what I would call a due process at all. It seemed that the Labour candidate announced something and then you followed it. And I would have thought a decision on this, where we're talking potentially multi-million-pound investment on public transport, whether I agree with it or not, and to be honest, I didn't really, but it's not my place to say, that should have followed due process. And instead, the Labour candidate bounced you into making a decision, and that's how it seems to me. So I really would like to drill into whether due process was done on that.
Very simple. I mean, I'll get one of the officers to talk about it. Very simple. that decision was made way before that announcement. Okay, I mean, obviously I can't be responsible for what candidates say in the course of an election, nor should I comment on that really. But what I can say is that decision was made prior to a by-election, and you know the by-election was how long ago? I don't know, weeks ago. So perhaps I can get an officer to enlighten you about that bit more.
I'm happy to confirm that Bath and North East Somerset officers were consulted by this authority's officers well before Christmas over this timing of a consultation that was going to potentially coincide with the by-election. So that information was shared with Baines officers, who I believe were in agreement that that was the right approach. The governance is very clear, and there are delegations in place concerning investment decisions. And whilst that is a work in progress, the other committee, the audit committee, has heard we are doing a lot of work to improve the governance. So in this particular issue, on this particular matter, it was very clear that the advice was to avoid a consultation during a pre-election period, which was an officer conversation, which I believe officers and Baines would have had with their politicians. Quite how far and widely that information was disseminated, I can't say, but what we can tell you is that timing was quite a long time before the by-election.
Councillor Wells.
So the statement that was made by Helen was not just that the consultation was suspended, but that any further development of the scheme has been suspended. Was that part of the statement not correct?
I haven't got her statement in front of me, so
I have.
Well, that's fine. I haven't. You're telling me that. What I can tell you is that it's down to the new mayor to decide what they do about that, and that is right and proper. And we've got a democratic process, so people will choose, and then they'll make the choices as part of that process, won't they, as part of the election, and then we can see what the mayor decides.
Thank you. Councillor Pocock, you? Yep.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
As you leave office, it's a pretty simple question. Do you feel that you're leaving office with public transport in a better place in the West of England combined authority area than when you found it, when you took office?
Yeah, I think I can say that. I mean, I think what we all have to recognise is that we had a pandemic, which was a particularly challenging thing for so many obvious reasons that we'll all understand. What we can say is that given that baseline and that situation, our bus numbers have recovered very well compared to other parts of the country. So I don't think we're quite at the very top, but we're pretty near it, which is good. And of course, there have been behavioural changes anyway, because lots of people are working remotely now that never did before the pandemic. So they're not making fewer journeys, they're not commuting in the same way with their cars, etc. So there's all sorts of changes. So if you benchmark it, we are performing well in that way. In terms of journeys that are being made, that has improved and favourably compared to other areas of the country too. In terms of the birthday bus initiative, that's been very successful, and I hope that the new mayor will continue with that and continue to keep that positive trajectory for our region. And then in terms of public transport in general, well, look, we do need to get on with spending lots of that money that I managed to get as mayor, because we haven't been as quick as we need to be frank, in spending that. There's been all sorts of delays. You can ask me about them if you want. What I can say is I'm hugely frustrated, and that's one of the reasons why there are sometimes tensions, because I believe that we need to be delivering on stuff. We can only expect to get new resources in the future by the fact that we can point to things that we've successfully delivered. I think having a big bank account is not a measure of success. It's a necessary stage, but you've got to spend that money and do things with it that delivers and makes a difference for the people. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I know that my chief executive would agree with that. But in order to do that, we also need politicians to be less argumentative. We need to have, if you've got disagreements, you've got to do them in the right place in the right way, so that we can forge ahead and actually get this delivery done. Because, you know, I'm just aware of all sorts of projects, all sorts of criticisms, all sorts of challenges. And actually, why are we finding it harder than any other region to address those things? Because they're getting on with things, they're starting to do things. We've done an awful lot of stuff. I've achieved, I think, about 70 to 80% of my manifesto, which I'm really pleased about. But I'm still wanting to do the last 20 or 30%. And I think we could have got even nearer to achieving that. And the new mayor needs to have that opportunity as well. You know, whatever our politics, what we must have in focus is not parochial concerns, but our regional concern. Not just because that's better for our region, it actually ends up being better for our individual councils as well, and therefore our citizens. So I hope that people will, you know, double down on our need to make the mayoral model work, especially as it's being expanded and given more powers and more resource by national government at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question, please, Dan. Wonderful news about the Portishead line, but suddenly we hear that there's a caveat about the comprehensive spending review and whether actually the Portishead line capital investment will survive the comprehensive spending review. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the likelihood of the Portishead line going ahead and what work might need to be done both by yourself in Westminster and in the region to minimise the possibility that the comprehensive spending review sticks a red line through it.
Well, I mean, look, there are always things at any point in government that could stymie any initiative. This is no different. The comprehensive spending review would apply at any point, at any time. I'm just very confident that this will happen. You know, we have worked extremely hard to get it to where it is. The combined authority has been at its very best in this process, I have to say, because we managed to find the resource to keep that project on track. Mm-hmm. It's not just important for the project, it's actually important for North Somerset Council because they've underwritten an awful lot of money. If it doesn't go ahead, they'll lose that money. They'll go into special measures. Mm-hmm. So we've actually saved the council by doing that. Yeah. So for all sorts of reasons, it's the right thing to do. You're asking me, you know, will things go ahead if there's a nuclear bomb? Well, we hope there isn't a nuclear bomb. We hope we're not going to be stifled by any kind of thing that central government decides. All we can do is what we can do. Yeah. And we've been doing it well on this and we must keep doing it.
Lovely, thank you. Any other questions for Dan? No. Toby, you had a few questions. Could I see if there's anyone else who'd like to ask something before coming back to you? Yeah.
Hello, I just wanted to actually pick up on the previous point made by the Chief Exec. I just want to make sure that the CEO, sorry, that the it is clear that the Baines, the information that was given to Baines in relation to the consultation and the bus lanes being closed, the information that went to Baines was simply about the consultation being paused because of violence. I just want to make sure that that's clear and there's no misunderstanding that Baines was given any information about the bus lane decision hadn't been taken, and I think it was slightly confusing.
So the information was about the pausing of a consultation. Yeah. As I think has been said many times, there has been no decision other than to pause a consultation. The project still has teams working on it, and those teams are Bristol City Council, Baines and Combined Authority officers, all working together until and unless somebody tells us not to. We're politically led, so we do as the committee wishes us to do.
But I think that the important thing to say is that this is a government initiative, this resource that's been provided for the A4 corridor. As part of that money and that focus by the previous government on it, consultation is a requirement. It's a legal requirement. There isn't a choice about it. You have to do it. You have to do it properly. That's how it works. So we are where we are. What is interesting about it, I suppose, is that we've got contradictions within the same political party. So we've got one leader of one party saying, I think the Lib Dem party saying they want to stop the consultation, and the deputy arguing, why are we stopping it? So the politics is complex, but the issue is quite straightforward in terms of the process. There's a legal requirement to do what the government have asked us to do. We have to adhere to that. We have to abide by that. We are doing that. The decision is within that context and therefore okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So else?
Thanks, Chair. Always happy to wait my turn. Dan, what role does Kevin Slocum perform for the Combined Authority?
I'm going to refer you to the Chief Executive because he did all the appointment and all the rest of it. But he's a fantastic officer who is amazingly able and extremely helpful to the Combined Authority.
So you will probably know we have around 400 full-time equivalent staff in the authority. We have a number of people who provide interim roles, subject to need to have extra capacity where we need it for short-term reasons. So on CRSCS, there are many tens of interim resources, either directly procured or through our strategic partner. In the case of communications, there is a vacancy in a corporate structure, and we felt we needed some work because, as you will recall, there were some issues that nobody here will be proud of to do with the way the corporate communications function performed in earlier periods, particularly around about 1.5 years ago. So what we wanted is a professional to come in and help improve the quality of our corporate communications function, and I'm really pleased to say that's exactly what we've had. The corporate communications is much stronger. We've had a restructuring of our comms function into what you might say is a more recognisable professional service from one that was dissipated or disparate across lots of different teams with comms resources residing in too many different programmes, leading to fragmented and at times inconsistent communications, and also less control than we would have wanted over what gets decided and how it goes out the door. So I'm very pleased that the communications function is now functioning much better. And when the individual you've named leaves us, as he's expected to do, very shortly, the communications function will be ready for a new mayor to be able to rely on it.
Okay, thanks. So it's comms. The accounts say financial services, so that's what I was just trying to work out there. Do you think you mentioned earlier, Dan, about political division holding back the combined authority and indeed being the reason for the best value notice? Do you think it was a good idea to bring in someone who was almost famous for facilitating political division during their time at Bristol City Council?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Do you think it was a good idea to bring someone who was Kevin Slocum,
Okay.
Who was famous for political division?
Well, I think that's a subjective judgment. I mean, what I can say about Kevin, he's smart, he's capable, he's probably the best there is in the business in our region, certainly, and arguably nationally, he's very good. He only has one failing, he's a Bristol Rovers fan. I forgive him that.
Yeah.
I forgive him that. I'm a City fan, you know. Each of us has to deal with challenges with other staff, and his happens to be he's the wrong colour in terms of football. Look, it's a very capable guy. We need capable people. You know, our problem isn't an abundance of ability. Our problem is needing to get capacity and good people in to help us. And Kevin has certainly done that, and I'm very proud to be associated with him and what he's done. It's made a real difference. I mean, I'll give you an example of how bad it was when I first became mayor. I went to an event shortly after the pandemic. It was just sort of lockdown had been lifted. It was the first visit I could make. I went to that visit. I asked the people had said there may be press. I asked one of the officers from the combined authority, now long gone, are the media coming? They said, oh, well, probably not, don't know. Very vague, very unclear. So I said, have we sent out a news release? And they said, no, we haven't. I said, why not? They said, the media might come. So that's the kind of level of communications that was going on. It was appalling. It was absolutely appalling. I mean, that's not a news release, that's history, isn't it? If you say something's happened, it's not informing journalists so they can come and do their job. I think if you talk to journalists in general, they will say that the communications function at the Combined Authority has been very poor for a very long time. And that's often why I get direct calls from them, because they've in the past found that things just didn't work and people didn't get back to them and what have you. So Kevin has transformed that, and that is right, because what this organisation needs to be is politically responsive. You may or may not agree with the policies, that's absolutely fine, and we can debate those and argue those, and that's absolutely right in a democracy. That's very important, and that's partly why we have some of the disagreements that we have, because we have a very fine political balance in this region. No mayor is going to have an easy ride on that front. You know, once the honeymoon's over, they'll be experiencing that too. But what we do need is professionalism of a high standard in the functions that operate in this organisation, and Kevin's very much been part of that. So I want to thank Kevin on the record, as it's my last meeting, as I've been reminded, for doing that. That's been a very important job, and that must continue in the future. Whoever that happens to be, they must be of a high calibre and able to do what they do well, to make sure that the public can make informed decisions about our performance, because you know, there are amazingly good things that have happened in the Combined Authority, incredible things, very positive things. You don't read about them. What you read about is the rows, and that can't be right. You know, the public need to know why this organisation is important to their lives. We make a major impact on about 1 million people every single day in one way or another. It's very important to know what that's about, so that they can make a judgment, not least when they're going into an election. Okay.
Thank you. And Thank you very much, Dan. And, on behalf of the committee, whatever our political differences over time, thank you very much for all that you've contributed in the role, and wishing all the very best in Westminster as you continue, no doubt, to work tirelessly for the region. So thank you.
Thank you for your kind words, Jerome, and thank you everybody for your attendance today, your questions. I've always found the most interesting part of my role really is the scrutiny. I've always enjoyed it. Some of the questions have been very tough and probing, and not always what I consider to be reasonable, but why should I? They wouldn't be good questions if I thought that. But I do think it makes the mayor make better decisions and be better informed. So I hope that the new mayor continues in the same vein as me. I don't think my predecessor went to hardly any scrutiny committees, did they? I think I've missed a couple, maybe three, but in the whole time, I think it's important. And I think the one thing I'd just say to you is, I do hope though that it can develop as a committee, and I say this, Jerome, in a friendly way, so that it isn't just about knockabout and sort of try and catch the mayor out, a bit like Prime Minister's questions, but is more about more informed reading, more informed questioning, because some of the things that we just discussed about communications, that's been going on for a long time and not been very good. And this committee has not been asking questions about those things, which would have been really helpful. Actually, you weren't to know, but I think if the Scrutiny Committee could be more informed about the issues to make us a better organisation, rather than it just be knockabout, that would be a lot better. Thank you very much, everybody.
So we're moving on. Yeah.
Can I suggest that people just turn their phones off? I've never been in a meeting before where people have taken phone calls. It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, I apologise that mine rang.
I just heard another phone call. Honestly, it's not difficult to turn your phone off. We can manage it, and I just find it's just really bad manners anyway. So thank you. People can do that.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. And we're moving now on to items from the public, so questions, statements and petitions. Anna Mountney is not here for her statement. So Dave Redgewell, can I ask you to speak?
Thank you very much, Dave Redgewell. Past representative on the West of England Mayoral Combined Borough Authority and North Somerset Council Bus Advisory Panel. And first thing to say is thank you very much to the Chief Executive for getting rid of AZEC Medical Services off the Westlink contract. The past year panel's been asking for that to happen for a long time, and I'm very grateful to the Mayor and to Hannah Young, the executive member in North Somerset, because it's a joint project, for removing the failing contractor. It's taken us long enough, but as somebody went out and experienced it firsthand, being left behind at Yatton Railway Station, Yate Railway Station, Wootton Under Edge, can't even get me to a funeral on time. Thank you very much. And let's hope that the new operator under WE DRT, Thames Valley Transport, provides the kind of service that they're providing for the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority. And I have been over to look, actually, Chief Executive and Chair, and they do a good job over there. So thank you very much. It just shows decisions can be made and people can be fired if they fail to provide the public transport services that the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority expect delivered to passengers. So thank you. We'll see on the 3rd of April how this transpires, but it is good, very, very good news. And it's a pity the Mayor didn't mention it, but it is good news. On the buses in general, well, yes, it's true. If you live on a mainline bus route in Bristol or Bath or West Sidmouth, you have a good service. The issues that continue to worry us, of course, are the rural services. We've still got to sort out the services with Gloucestershire County Council in particular. And I believe there's a letter of intent between the two authorities, because I was at the meeting, because I sit on that bus advisory board as well at the forum, from this council to Gloucestershire to start discussions on the Wootton Under Edge link. Well, that will be very much welcomed if that actually happens. So obviously, there's a bit more work to do on buses in the rural area in particular. And that's where we need to concentrate our efforts. I think the new buses in Bristol are welcome, jointly between the Combined Authority and Bristol City Council, and the new routes, but we've still got to look at frequency. What I am concerned about is to make sure, and it will be decision for the new mayor now, how we go forward with the £14 million worth of BSIP money, about 17 million with North Somerset, and make sure it goes through the bus advisory panel and through the advisory board. The advisory board didn't take any decisions to move that money, which I'm very pleased for. So it'll come back to us. Thank you, Chief Executive, again, for us to have the conversation with the new mayor, which is the way it should be, because the DFT want the governance to work that way. On rail, well, I'm shocked at what you said, because I was with the DFT this week 5 times, and the Portishead railway line, as far as I'm concerned, as far as they're telling me, is going ahead. And that's coming from Peter Hendy. I have no understanding Labour is going to cancel that project after going so far down the road it is now. So I think the borders will be in the ground. I can't think there's anything going to happen spending review to stop economic regeneration, growth and employment in the West Midlands Combined Authority. I welcome the end of special measures and North Somerset now being allowed to join after the elections. And we just need to get on with Metro West and get building it, really. Those are the issues. But the most important thing for this organisation, remember, it's not about flying desks, as I said with Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham. It's about delivering public transport on the ground, day in, day out, 24 hours a day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. And I think that's, as Anna Mountain is not here, the other statements available on the website. We have completed public questions and statements. So thank you very much. And we move on now to the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting from the 27th of January. Could I ask for sort of any comments on accuracy, and then I'll request a proposer and seconder for those minutes. Councillor Pocock. Okay, lovely, thank you. And Councillor Weston to second. So those are now approved. We're on now to Chair's announcements. I want to pick up, as we don't have a matters arising, I'm just going to cover a couple of things following on from last meeting. I think one is picking up on Dave Redgewell's statements that when we are looking at briefings for the Scrutiny Committee on Transport, that we are looking in there about how consultation is being sought from the bus advisory panel, and that was something which Councillor Addison raised with me as well. So if we can ensure that that's baked into how we're looking at that, that would be appreciated. I think the other thing that I will pick up with the Chief Executive is that I think if we haven't got a formal place for matters arising, being able to see the list of outstanding actions coming from the committee as a routine part of the committee's papers would be really helpful for us to sort of track progress. Yeah. So Stephen's happy to confirm that will take place. I just want to pick up briefly the issue of the kind of bus reform and bus options. So at the last meeting, we noted that in terms of the ARAP report, there were just kind of five bullet points relating to that, and our concern that we would really like there to be more detail in the public domain, ideally with scrutiny, around the scope of that report. I'm pleased that there's been a bus franchising workshop between team members in the combined authority and the leads in the unitary authorities. It would be just good to have an understanding of how things are fitting together in terms of what the progress is on that report, with that view that we're not double handling, you know, that when we're getting that ARAP report, we've defined the scope really well, and we're working to a good plan on it. The other thing that kind of was reported back to me was, this may have been mentioned before, but we understand there's going to be a bus services task and finish group. When it would be good to have an understanding of what this bus services task and finish group is going to be looking at. You're
asking me.
I'll talk to you outside the meeting, because I'm not clear on the detail of that either. So those were the announcements. I had other items we will pick up in the work plan for the committee. Thank you. So I think we're now on to the devolution white paper, and after this item, I suggest that we take a break. So I think Jess Lee, you're going to talk us through the devolution white paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got my colleague Helen Isles here as well to answer any questions that people have. We provided, in response to the request from the committee, an update on the devolution white paper, which was circulated with your papers and sets out, I think, the headlines of the government's package. I think the key points to just flag in there are the move from government towards increasing the coverage of mayoral combined authorities across the country, and the formalisation of the model of combined authorities and the sort of introduction of that strategic layer of government as combined authorities. So it's taking away the approach that has been taken to date, where individual places negotiate a bespoke arrangement with government, and making it much more formal, so there is a clear framework within which combined authorities can be established and then develop. The introduction of the established status for combined authorities as the more mature authorities is also worth just noting. And at that point, combined authorities become eligible to access integrated funding settlements, which obviously provides considerably more flexibility to places to be able to reflect local priorities in the way that they're spending money. The slide deck also sets out the range of new powers that government are considering in terms of devolution to combined authority areas. But it's just worth noting on timing. We're expecting that there will be a bill to follow this white paper in the summer, and then it will make its way through Parliament. So it would be probably early 26 at the earliest before that would reach royal assent. The other thing to note is the interrelationship, I suppose, between this and the later paper on the agenda for the committee on the best value notice. As people have mentioned, the fact that the best value notice has not been extended for us means that our combined authority is now working towards eligibility for the established status of combined authorities, which is positive for us and allows us to now make progress in that direction. So I think in terms of headlines, that's what's in there, and we can obviously answer any questions people have on the content of the deck.
Thank you. Could I start by asking, I mean, it was an item that was elsewhere in the papers. It was saying that the approach for North Somerset coming into the combined authority and the timetable for that is now established. I just wonder if you could explain a bit more what that process looks like now.
So, Chair, I can perhaps come in. There has been correspondence received by the leader of North Somerset from the minister responsible for this. It was copied into all the leaders. I believe that letter's in the public domain. What that is effectively is the end of it. That is the summary. So what you've seen is what we have. We've certainly followed up with officials seeking guidance as to any further information. Obviously, the letters you will have perhaps seen makes clear that government intends to contact the new mayor, because clearly what we need to do is set out a process that has political support locally. And so therefore, whilst we are continuing to work behind the scenes on what might alignment look like at officer level, and indeed, frankly, we've been doing that very well, I think, with North Somerset for a whole load of time, really. If you look at buses, for example, our work around our integration with our 2 BSIP pots has been actually very, very good in relative terms. So there's references in there to more alignment in things like development of our local growth plans. We already work with them in our investment service and aspects of our skills and employment. So I suppose there's a lot of entanglement, that you might describe it. And if the government is sending a message to the next mayor to maybe go the next step to formalising the entanglement, I think that will be something that the political leaders will need to talk about, because at this point there's no reference to any money in that letter. And I don't think anybody likes to give anything away for free. So that is a political conversation to come with the new mayor and committee.
Okay, so to summarise, the current position is let's talk, guys, after the election. Okay, thank you. Toby.
So obviously we've now got the 18-month call-off timer running after the best value notice. Can our pitch to establish ourselves as a what's the phrase, the established authority. Can that happen in parallel to the 18 months?
Yes. So the eligibility for established status means that you need to be 18 months free of a best value notice or other intervention like that. In reality, the combined authority areas that have already sort of moved in that direction, like Greater Manchester and West Midlands, it's taken them it's much more of an involved exercise in becoming ready for a single settlement, that you can't take it on overnight. So actually an 18-month period is probably realistic in terms of our combined authority working towards being in a position to be able to take on that responsibility. I don't think we would be ready before then anyway, and we can absolutely do all that work in parallel, and we are already thinking about, we've talked about investment strategy development in parallel with our local growth plan, and we're working in that direction. We'll be ready for it by the time we become eligible, but realistically I don't think it's delaying us.
Thanks.
This may be too early because I understand this document is kind of, it's not particularly in depth, but it talks about in new powers an ambition in the long term to align public service boundaries. And one of the areas in that is police. What impact would that have on police and crime commissioners? Would we do away with police and crime commissioners? Would that something that comes under the responsibility of the combined authority area?
So I think that's one of the things that would need to be worked through by government if that's one of the things that they're going to take on. What is in the white paper is high level, as you say, and the detail of all of that will be worked through as we get the bill, and then it works its way through Parliament.
Okay. I expected that was probably the.
Stephen, do you want to?
All I would say is that what you're seeing there is effectively a menu of what could happen. And I think that everyone knows there's a limit to how much public sector reorganisation any system can cope with. So if you take our health system, our police and crime, our fire and rescue, and this combined authority with the potential to being enlarged, as well as local government reorganisation happening amongst some of our neighbours, there's a very real question about waiting for perfection. You'd be waiting an awful long time, boundaries all neatly joined up. Obviously, someone like me, I'd love all that because it makes life so much simpler. But the reality is it's always going to be, in my view, a bit messier here. And we just have to work with what we've got. So I don't think we should be expecting a sort of a total solution, a perfect piece of geography with everything in the same boundaries. There'll always be a need to work across boundaries. And actually, I think we should get used to that because we haven't been as good as we need to be working across boundaries anyway. And for example, there's a rather big place called Cardiff just over the water where there's going to be a report in the next few weeks about the Severn Tidal Commission. That's really important. We need to not be bounded by any boundaries in this stuff. So travel to work, we have a lot of people, half of the patients who go to the Royal Hospital in Bath come from Wiltshire. It's outside our region. So we just got to be looking a little bit higher, not looking in and downwards at ourselves, but looking around us, because that's what people's lives are really about, aren't they? They don't notice the boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jess and Helen. And we're now going to have a break for 10 minutes. So that will take us to 11:26. And Bob, it's at the toilets or at the restaurant.
Pasture.
What's it called?
Pasture.
Pasture. So that's left out of the building, then left again.
The coffee's in pasture as well.
Yes. Yes. It's good. Okay. See you all shortly.
Very good.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I think that this is your item, Bob. Give us a quick update on the mayoral election.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a very quick update on the mayoral election. Just to let you know that back in June last year, the authority appointed a returning officer, and that is Chief Executive Stephen Peacock. The returning officer, however, is accountable to the Cabinet Office and the Electoral Commission, not to the council itself. So it's a Crown appointment in those terms. Just to say that the elections are being prepared and managed centrally by Bristol City Council's election team, who will be running that on behalf of the mayoral combined authority and on behalf of the returning officer. The deputy returning officers are appointed at Bristol. The elections themselves will be run by local returning officers because all the facilities to run the elections are held by the unitary authorities. So the returning officers in each of the authorities will be responsible for running the election in their actual area. The nominations open on the 25th of March, which means that that's when the pre-election period will formally start. There is a £5,000 deposit required for all candidates who want to be taken forward. And they need to start registering after the 25th of March. The election itself is on the 1st of May, but we anticipate that the announcement, obviously when the counting of the elections take place, will be on the 2nd of May. This is a first past the post election as opposed to the previous elections, which have been, I think, single transferable vote. But so this will be first past the post. So from that point of view, the counting may be slightly quicker than on previous occasions. Just to say that the mayor's appointment means that after the election, the mayor will continue in post until the 3rd of May, midnight the 3rd of May, and the newly elected mayor will start at 1 minute past midnight on the 4th of May.
Thank you, Bob. Councillor Clark.
Just being a bit pedantic here, can I just ask about deposits? Because my understanding is that in Bristol, they have candidates have to produce their £5,000 in cash, and in other local authorities, surrounding local authorities, they don't need to do that. If that is the case, why on earth are we asking people to troll up with a bundle of cash?
The acceptance of nominations is being dealt with by the Deputy Returning Officer at Bristol City Council, so I can't answer that question at the moment, I'm afraid.
But they're doing it on behalf of WECA, and I just feel that, you know, that should be resolved, because it just, this day and age, it just seems completely unnecessary. It should be done with a bank transfer, to be honest with you.
We will relay that point, Councillor Clark. Obviously, what we can't do is ask Bristol to change the way it operates. They're providing a service for us because they have the infrastructure, but we will certainly relay that comment.
You're the client. You're their client.
Yes, obviously, and within reason. Yeah, I will definitely bring it up with you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's any other questions on Councillor Randalls.
Just out of curiosity, what's the forecasted total cost of the election?
It is in the budget. I believe it's 3.3 million, around that number, and it's very formulaic in the sense that it is based on population, number of election polling booths, election stations, and what have you. But it's and it's all retrospectively provided to the Electoral Commission to provide us with the confidence that it's the money is proportionate. So it is in the budget that was approved last committee.
Thank you. We're on now to the work plan item. Jill, would you like to speak to that? And then I'll come in as required.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is similarly a brief update based on the requirements that were made at the last meeting about work plan items. I do take the point that was made earlier about including the action tracker update information for other items that are discussed. We do have this information. I've got it in front of me in case I was asked, but I take the point that adding it to future papers will be really helpful. since the paper was published, things are moving on, and there are more developments. And I think probably even live in the meeting this morning, there's been even more of an update. So if I can hand back to you for the bit that I think was the question that was being asked to you by members separately.
Yes. So the item that we were discussing with Chris Salmon was what we want to be covering in the transport briefings. And I think the way that we're looking at that is that we've kind of got a bucket of transport issues. We will look carefully through how we design that agenda, who needs to be involved, so that, you know, bus service improvement programme, CRSTS, bus service reform. There will be a place for those coming into the briefing, so that we've got, as far as possible, an integrated approach on these things, and all key questions are being looked at. So there's a bit of thought and attention to detail that needs to go into the design of that. And there is a question about what's possible during the pre-election period, and what might have to wait until after the election with new mayor. But at the very least, we'll get the process and the agenda designed for that early. So let's get some timescales on that in the action tracker. That would be good. I think, do you want to pick up, Jill, the sort of college visits, and then I'll have a little bit to say about that as well. But if you go first on that.
We're still liaising with colleagues in the colleges. We have, I think there are 10 places that are supported by the Adult Skills Fund. So we're still working with colleagues to work out which visits there could be, whether it will be 3 places in one day, 3 separate visits, transport, that sort of thing. The logistics of it, as well as the content. So it has moved on, but I'm not in a position yet to update you more definitely yet. But we'll do very soon. It's a priority of ours.
Thank you. And did you want to ask about members' preferences for daytime or early evening meetings?
Thank you. Yes, I did. I know it sounds a bit organisational, but yes, especially given what you've just said about how the transport update information might be. When we ran task and finish groups before, they were twilight meetings because people found that easier to attend. So I did want to find out, perhaps with your responses through the chair after this, whether that is a preference, whether evening meetings are a preference for you.
Could we just do a show of hands on people who like early evening meetings and people who like daytime meetings? Okay. And you can vote for both. I think it's more to find out what. So if we go for daytime briefings, people who'd be happy with those. Okay, so that's 3. Could you keep your hands up, please? So, yeah. 5. And then evening briefings. Yeah. So it might be necessary to alternate a bit, but
that's absolutely fine. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Yeah, sorry.
Just asking whether I can be part of those, being North Somerset, the briefings. Is that possible?
I don't see any reason why not. I'll check with Stephen. I think if we're working so closely,
especially the transport. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, anything else on the work planning, Jill? Or, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Toby.
Sorry, Chair. One of the items we discussed at the last meeting, we didn't discuss it during the work planning item, but was about the bus reform and how Scrutiny would be involved in that. And that was what we discussed. Was more than a briefing. It was informally agreed, I would say, between the members and the officers who presented the item that some kind of workshop would be appropriate, and that the rough appropriate time for that workshop would be around June, because that's when the work would be sufficiently developed that there was something to talk about, but not concluded, so that Scrutiny could actually have an input to the process. Now, bearing in mind our next meeting is in June, I don't want that to fall through the cracks and then we don't discuss it again until June.
It's one of the reasons that I'm so keen to have the action tracker, because that was a very clear action from the 27th of January. It also crosses over quite a lot with the action that's taking place with the portfolio holders in the unitary authority, and working out the right balance between the unitary authorities and scrutiny on this is a bit of a three-legged race. And I think we just need to kind of, it needs to be on the action tracker. We need to be looking at it well in advance so that we can all get coordinated around it.
So through you, Chair, just I think what I'm hearing is that definitely need to improve the action tracking. That's not controversial. We definitely all agree on that. Specifically, we talked in the break and you referred to the need to do a bit of a stock take of all the different briefing, task and finish around the various strands of transport. And there are at least 3 officers in the back of this room who are nodding at me, and I take it to mean that they will prepare something for us to share in the first instance with you, Chair, to try and bring this back, and then through you to then disseminate this back out to members of this committee as well as other relevant groups so that we can have one version of the truth. What is the plan to engage with the various groups? They're not nodding anymore. Yes, they are. Good, they're still nodding. So take that, Chair, as an officer action, which will be tracked. Yes, I think the specific point, though, is I want us to try and just bring the strands together, because it sometimes we might be talking about slightly different things, thinking we're talking about the same thing. I'd like us to write it down and share it through you, Chair, with members, so that we're all really clear what we're doing.
So we're on now, we're moving forward onto agenda item 11, which is the consideration of reports going to the Joint Committee and Combined Authority Committee on the 14th of March. So I'm going to pick up the items for the main committee, and the first item is the sort of, or the I think will be good to discuss now, is the lifting of the best value notice. So are there any comments? I mean, bearing in mind that we will be feeding back as a scrutiny, I will be feeding back on your behalf as a scrutiny committee to Friday's meeting. So what I'm really looking for is comments and discussions, and in most instances we've got an officer in the room who will be able to inform us on that. So the first item will be the best value notice, and whether there's any particular comments that any of you would like to make regarding the best value notice. No? Okay.
Sorry.
Yep, good. Okay. Toby, then Ed. Yep.
Well, just to say, like I said to the Mayor earlier, I do think it is genuinely a good thing for the Combined Authority, and I think most of the committee members would agree with that. However, just some caution about the need to continue engaging with the process that has been in place to get out of the best value notice, and that it doesn't end here and now.
Thank you, Eden.
They're discussing the Warm Homes social housing funding wave. Sorry, am I in the right?
That's a different item. So
okay, sorry, so, I'll hold.
Could you just, which item would that be? Is that
the joint committee item in the budget?
Okay, we'll come back to that after we've dealt with the main committee. Yeah, no. Well, that's my fault for not being clear enough about the order. I think the other thing I would say about if I just comment quickly and then I'll come to you. I think the other thing about the best value notice and the lifting of it is that there are clearly actions outstanding associated with the best value notice and potential review by the independent improvement panel of progress, and we will. Going back to the action tracker and the agreement around the use of the action tracker, we'll make sure those are captured there. So picking up on your point, Toby, really, which is let's not lose sight of the continuous improvement journey. Councillor Hodge, Lucy.
Yeah, so it's just building on that continuous improvement journey and the work on continuing to make the Constitution fit for purpose. We'll just really wanting assurance that will be a priority with the organisational improvement plan that is taking things forward.
So absolutely, and just obviously two points there. One is that, as you know, the letter makes clear that the independent improvement panel will stay in place for a period of 6 months, and as you will recall, the committee members themselves have identified some areas of agreement around ways of working that have an impact on the constitution that will, as it were, be in the inbox for the new mayor, because clearly that does need to be looked at by a new mayor. That includes specifics around things like the way we formalise collaboration through possible use of portfolio roles around the table, so with committee members taking responsibility potentially for specific areas. I mean, there's a lot to do, and the important thing is you've got continuity with the same chair of the improvement panel greeting a new mayor, being watched in a good way by the Department for Homes, Communities and Local Government, who also attend the panel. So I think that will not be lost. None of that will be lost. Also, just to say on organisation improvement, and we had a brief conversation here before about this, there is a plan that is designed to bring together all of the various elements of previous plans, some of which date back 2 or even 3 years, to restate what is our organisation improvement journey going forward. And what we've said in the January committee is that we will bring a paper to a future committee which will set out not only the highlights of the improvement plan we're looking to deliver, but also how we expect to be held to account in terms of the transparency and the oversight. So that will come. But again, it's right, I think, that we take that first to a new mayor and they then take that to the committee.
Thank you. So the next item is on the committee, the WECA committee agenda is delivery assurance. So that's considering changes within the investment fund and CRSTS programs against agreed delivery assurance principles. So do I have questions or comments regarding that, please? No. Okay. I think I did have, which was question really. I mean, about the level of headroom associated with the CRSTS program with the Porter's headline.
Yep.
So 20. Yes. Well, I think that's we can cover it in both areas. I mean, it fits here as well. So
we'll be able to speak to Dr. Transport if you like.
Oh, should we wait for the? Should we wait for that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll cover that then. Could I ask a general question though about the state of headroom?
You're speaking now about the investment fund, or?
Yes.
I mean, there is a report. I mean, it's in the report. Pete's here, so he could give you a quick heads up on that. There is a figure always in the report. It's somewhere south of 20 million, isn't it? But we'll wait for Pete.
Okay. I am getting a bit kind of getting the right place between. Do you think that's better here?
So delivery, yes, the delivery assurance report is normally where we would give as it were, a rolling commentary on the state of play with the investment fund and how much is unallocated and allocated.
Yeah,
Pete's the expert on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's normally a report which goes to each committee which talks about the investment fund programme and the headroom. There are no new funding asks of the investment fund this cycle, so that report hasn't come to this meeting, and you've just got the delivery assurance report. I can let you know, though, that the headroom in the investment fund is currently 17.6 million. That is until 27-28, which is the active investment period that we're working to. It's worth bearing in mind that that includes around 40 million of over-programming, reflecting that schemes may not deliver as planned or be delayed. And therefore, we've over-programmed to give increased opportunity in the shortest terms, have a larger programme, the same approach, which is now being deployed in CRSTS.
I think, although it's not in the report because of the reasons you just heard, it's also a very important thing for a new mayor to be very aware of. This, as an investment-focused organisation, we should always be looking ahead and having plans. And this committee, previous committees have allocated it. Inevitably, that means there isn't much headroom. And therefore, even allowing for the fact that things do slip, not that we want them to, but we do, we've allowed for that. We do need to ensure that as we look, for example, to June or July, when we're hoping to take an investment strategy paper to the new committee, that's all about where we invest the money going forward, except, of course, most of the money is spoken for. And that's something which a new mayor will be, I'm sure, wanting to talk to us about, because the question of how much discretion there is will obviously be foremost in the mind, but it is rightly mostly committed.
Sorry, could I ask whether the Keynsham bypass bus lanes are also still sitting in that sort of funding approach within the 17.6 million?
So that is CRSTS money.
Okay.
So that is not investment money, and it is
Okay.
in there. Yes. No, as I said earlier, no decisions have been taken, and nor would they without a political decision on that.
Yes. So it's sitting within CRSTS as projected expenditure, and it hasn't been moved. That's fine. Thank you. Any other comments on sort of delivery assurance, financial headroom on the investment fund and the CRSTS programs? No, thank you. So we are, thank you very much. So we're on to the update on the progress with the Climate and Ecological Strategy and Action Plan. Is that Roger going to speak to us? Roger, are you able to join us and to give us a little bit of a flavour of the what's happening on the Climate and Ecological Strategy and Action Plan?
Good morning, everyone. Roger Hoare, I'm the Director of Environment at the Combined Authority. Yes, so presented as a routine is our Climate and Ecological Strategy Action Plan update. So we committed when we first launched back in 2023 to come to committee every 6 months to make sure it's clear on how we were doing against those objectives. The paper sets out, I think, a very positive story in terms of how we've invested the Green Recovery Fund, which was allocated in 2021. That totals 60 million in total, with 36 million from the investment fund, covering a really wide range of projects. As you'll see at the back of the paper, there's over 100 actions underway. Some having great progress, some are more difficult, but actually this is a really tricky area. Tackling both these existential crises is not straightforward. So there's a lot of learning going on, but also some progress. Very proud to kind of present in the earlier part of the report a series of real successes I think we should be really proud of as a region. I think it's really a very, this agenda kind of gains a lot of support across committee, and rightly so. And I think we've made real progress over the last 6 months with some really standout statements made at September committee last year, and now we're moving towards launching the Green Growth West Impact Fund. So that's £10 million investment from committee with £100 million impact fund that we hope to run over the next few years. So as one example of many, I'm really happy to take any questions or thoughts you have on what we've presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Roger? I've got a couple of comments. I think the first one is really about, as you know, I kind of bang on about carbon emissions and the return that we get when we invest in carbon saving measures, what the saving is in carbon. I mean, I was really pleased to see when we were looking at the key metrics on the Green Recovery Fund on the tree planting. Actually, it wasn't the tree planting, it was the business energy use. 450 tons of carbon saved, and it would be great in all the areas to be seeing what is the carbon equivalent impact of our investments, and what bangs for our buck do we get from making these investments in carbon savings. And the more we can get that sort of language around carbon saving, the better. I'd also just say I was very pleased to see that the reviewing our joint local transport plan is identified as a kind of #1 priority, because the transport is the area over the next 10 to 20 years where a lot of the thinking is that transport and food are the area where the biggest carbon savings are possible. So looking at the joint local transport plan so we can get really clear about the carbon savings that are possible means that we can kind of look at our policy in an integrated way. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting report. I just have one point, actually, very interesting, very comprehensive. And it's great to have the key outcomes in point number 11. I wouldn't have minded seeing a few more outcomes in a easy to digest way. I mean, you can find some more in the narrative, but whether a few more of the actions in the table, we could have had an equivalent with a bit more outcome detail.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So I think as the projects are starting to develop and actually get into delivery, I think we'll see a lot more data we can start sharing. So we'll take that away. Thank you.
And Chris Salmon and Ben Mosley are here to discuss the transport infrastructure projects. Do you want to speak for that? Can we talk about over-programming? And Mark, was that your question? I think what might be better is actually just to get a bit of an overview first from Ben and Chris, and then we'll dive into the detail of some questions, including over-programming. So Chris and Ben, kind of, I can give you the floor just to sort of talk us through, you know, what are some quite detailed papers.
Yes, I can start, absolutely. Good morning, Chair, good morning, committee. So yes, the paper has 4 recommendations, 1 for approval and 3 for noting. The approval is relating to Metro West Phase 1, which has been talked about a lot already this morning. Good news about Porter's headline. This recommendation is to approve the allocation and drawdown of £27.2 million of CRSGS funding, subject to full business case approval, which would then enable the project to start construction, to be able to then open the new line between Portishead and Bristol. And then the 3 items to note, there's one around the commitment to continued development and delivery of the Metro West Phase 2 project. There's an item around CRSGS noting that the additional funding to Metro West projects won't be at the detriment to existing schemes, that there is an underwrite being committed, and that this, you know, obviously the schemes need to go through good governance, which means the important stage gate reporting that's underway, and to make sure that schemes continue to provide good value for money and are delivered within the available funding. And then there's an item to note around the future rail strategy, which is to be work to begin on that strategy and linked to the local growth plan.
Just to say, Chair, that we, as discussed, I think previously, that we have tightened the governance arrangements around the CRSTS portfolio. So there is now a portfolio board, which is going to be chaired by Chris, and have infrastructure directors attend with input from unitary authorities and directors of finance. That should give us a clearer grip over the programmes and projects within the portfolio, as in what goes in and what comes out. I'll just remind all colleagues that we do need to utilise the funding by March 2027. We take that deadline very seriously. In fact, there is a timer in our office which tells us how many days there are left to utilise the funding. But we did find we needed to update the governance around that, and that's what Chris and I have been doing.
Thank you very much, Ben and Chris. Quick question then about the over-programming before I come on to other members. Where do we stand with the over-programming at the moment, so particularly taking into account the Keynsham bypass?
Yeah, so the Keynsham bypass is part of the Bristol to Bath project, which is within the core part of the project, the CRSGS programme, and that funding still remains, as been discussed earlier. The over-programming, which was brought to July committee last year, included a list of projects which were then approved at committee and subsequently by DFT, allows up to £135 million worth of projects to be in the over-programming list. There was some headroom which will enable the ability for the Metro West 1 funding, if that gets approved at committee, to be included, and therefore that's where the other programming status is at.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies if this comes across as slightly exasperated. It's because it intentionally is. It's to do with the Porter's headline and general frustration I've got with our rail projects. And I realise it's not yourself, so I'm endeavouring not to shoot messengers. But I've been around a while, so I remember when Porter's headline was being discussed, and the original price that we were quoted was about 50, 60 million. And then they went out there and went, oh, well, actually, the tracks were in a bit poor condition. So the cost tripled. And we went, well, don't worry, that's the end of the cost. We've checked everything. And then we come here. One of the reasons the drivers of the increased costs is assets have been found to be in a poorer condition than expected. We've been talking about this for a dozen years. At what point did we decide to not only check the tracks, but also the bridges, viaducts and culverts? Because surely once we realised that everything else was in a fairly crappy state, we'd have gone and checked out all the rest of the ruddy stuff. And instead, here we are, and the price is jumping by 30 million again. And this, what's got me worried now is, well, what Metro West Phase 2? Have we actually checked everything there? Or are we going to end up with another 30 million increase there too? It's just an exasperation that we seem to go, oh, we better check the track. 6 years' time, let's check the bridges. 6 years' time, let's check the culverts. Has anyone checked the signage? Oh, we better go out and do it now. How about we check the whole damn thing and come up with a total cost? So I know it's genuinely frustrated.
You're communicating your exasperation and the challenge very clearly, Mark. So thank you. So Ben and Chris respond to that challenge.
So I think it'd be fair to say, and as Councillor Weston has already recognised, that Chris and I weren't part of this when. But what I would say regards to Metro West 1 is that the team is learning lessons all the time, and we are applying those to Metro West 2. And I'm going to pass over to Chris to give you a bit more detail about that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for Metro West 2, as part of the full business case, it's expected to be a market price to include for the designs that have been underway, because of course there's work underway already on these schemes. So that full business case will be able to reflect the market price of the current status, which includes, a good understanding of the challenges around the existing infrastructure.
Steve. Can I share your exasperation? We're writing a local growth plan. This region's big impediment to growth is transport. Actually waiting years to get an answer from someone a long way away from here doesn't help any of us. And because the inflation over that time probably accounts for a lot of the extra cost. What you'll find with Metro S2 is we took a project that 6 months ago had a date of delivery that we didn't like, and we're dragging it forward. Yes, you've heard it. We're dragging it forward. We want to get that station built earlier. Admittedly, I'm not sure the Chinese State Railway Company are going to come along and do some case studies on how quick our railway work is. We're not making precedents here that are internationally good ones, right? This is getting better from a standing start, where projects have taken too long to deliver, because they, I think, have been seen too much as standalone transport projects and as economic and social projects. Now, actually, that's where devolution really helps, because you can look at these things as about connecting people to jobs, leisure, work, etc. And I think that the newfound energy and enthusiasm to see these projects for more than they are is actually having an effect culturally in Network Rail, in DFT, GWR. On Metro West 2, we're seeing actually people getting together and sort of throwing the rule books out of the window for a moment, saying, how fast could we build this if we really put our shoulders to the wheel? Finally, the point about Metro S1 is, yeah, of course, you're right. They're very, very expensive. And we as an authority, let alone North Somerset, couldn't withstand a kind of 10% change in the outturn cost, which is why it's incredibly important to note that DFT is standing behind the fixed price once it's finally signed off. So what they have said in writing is the cost, correct me if the phrase is wrong, cost liability or words to that effect, is borne by the department once it's signed off. It's not on us. Now, you've heard what the Mayor said earlier about spending reviews and what have you. So we still need to get through another couple of months perhaps just to get it all signed and sealed. But it will be signed and sealed, and this authority, North Somerset, will then be able to confidently say they know the extent of their exposure. But we have to keep at it. It's working differently. It's bringing things forward rather than accepting them slipping back. So it is a new world.
Thanks, Chair. On the deliverability of the CRSTS programme, see, I am happy to see the Metro West, the rail projects going in there and being able to be funded, but it does say something when famously difficult to deliver rail is easier to deliver in the time period than some of the other projects we have in CRSTS. So I am also happy to see the changes you've made to the governance, and I think we're starting to see that filter through in Bristol and able to put through business cases quicker than before. So that is great. My concern is that with this level of over programming, we are now we are basically assuming an underspend on the other schemes, and I'm just worried about the attitude that that might set to the teams delivering those schemes if because we're not sure yet which of the programs is going to underspend. So how do we make sure that they retain that delivery focus when we come up to the deadline?
I'll just quickly provide an overview and then pass to Chris for some more details. So the key thing with the governance changes is that the board, the portfolio board, won't just look at CRSTS 1, but will also look at CRSTS 2. And that will also involve weekly monitoring of where we are with the portfolio. And so directors will have, in effect, live data to make key decisions with regard to what's in CRSTS 1. What we do need to do, however, is also use this time very wisely, just going to your point around themes, perhaps losing momentum on projects. To know whether they will be included in CRSTS 2 or not, and obviously we need to understand the scale of that funding, and hopefully we'll get more information about that this year. The key thing, however, is having the governance so that your directors and your transport portfolio holders can make decisions using the data and also understand where projects are in the various portfolios. I'm going to pass to Chris, who will add more detail to that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and the teams are absolutely committed to the delivery of the schemes. And actually, the good news story is being able to show that we've got these. Metro West is going to help the deliverability of what CRSTS as a programme, and we are having part of this underwrite is to guarantee is to give confidence to that those schemes can continue. Using the governance and stage gate reporting will enable that agile decision making that will be needed over the next 2 years depending how things progress. And we are also in active conversations with Department for Transport, as Ben said, around transition between CRSTS 1 and 2.
The key thing about the board, though, is that it will give the transparency needed about those decisions. So your directors will be able to talk to you and be able to talk to you about the decisions which were made at the board, and that will be the game changer. So you'll be able to see evidence-based decisions.
Yeah, I just want to give a bit more context into how much change is happening. The way we're trying to work is we're trying to ensure that officers from one authority are around a table with officers from other authorities talking about not only their projects but the whole portfolio, because we have a shared ambition. One is that there are more than enough projects, good projects, for us to fill our time and spend all our money. And two is we don't want to send any back to government, right? So there is so much we agree on. I think in the past we've allowed disagreements to crowd out the agreement. And as I say, there's more than enough projects we all agree on. What we have done additionally, which I think is going to change this perception that other projects will be somehow, on the back burner to let others through, is we've recognised that we have no debt as a combined authority, and we have a facility that would allow us to eat into borrowing headroom, which we've never used, because as you know, we have about £400 million in the bank, and so it's never come up. If you're really bored on a rainy Saturday, you might want to look at the balance sheets of the other mayoral combined authorities, most of which are using their borrowing, because what they have is an ambition and they have a long-term outlook, and they know that they need to use every tool in the kit box to get going. We've never done that. Now, introducing the prospect of using your borrowing to underwrite the notional, and I say notional because, I defy anybody around this table, we certainly can't as officers predict which projects will land in which day. But if you remove the threat that we might not have enough money, then you don't need to dial back or throttle that back on anything. And what it is about being more ambitious and pushing people and rewarding people's ambition And I think the culture is the other thing. The culture of win-win, working with officers, wherever they're from, whichever authority, and our politicians. It is beginning to change. There's a long way to go.
Thank you. I want to pick Councillor Mike Bird from North Somerset. You're here as an observer, but I welcome you to.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously, Portishead Rail is a thing we're trying to get over the line for many, many years. And one of the, obviously, hourly trains is never going to be enough. But one of the things with the Portishead Railway is obviously all we're doing is delivering Portishead passengers into Temple Meads. And one of the main things in the future would be this station at Ashton Gate, which links in with Metrobus and gets people into the centre of town. Well, I notice it's only in future rail strategy. I mean, I'd rather see that in phase 2. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, the future rail strategy obviously is going to be informed by the local growth plan, which, you know, I think absolutely we'll be able to highlight where stations could be brought forward in the future. We are working closely with DfT about COSGS2 and what funding, you know, because some of these schemes take multiple years, so we need to start looking, as Chief Executive Stephen described, the ambition over future funding periods beyond just current 5-year cycles. So whether that's Ashton Gate or other stations, that needs to be considered in longer term, you know, whether it's COSGS2 or other funding. And I don't know if you want to say any more.
Well, it was just returning to Councillor Weston's point about lessons learned. So with COSTS1, I think there's been a lot of lessons we've learned as organisations and as officers of how we've approached that opportunity. We need to take a far more strategic approach to CRSTS2, and that's why we've made the inclusion of the future rail strategy here. So you as members will be able to see how the strategies link into the various funding pots and have a very evidence-based look of the decisions being taken through CRSTS2. So that's the key thing, really.
Thank you. Toby, and then start drawing to a close on this.
So you've mentioned CRSTS2 a couple of times. I'm going to ask a little bit about that. It's fair to say when the CRSTS1 package was put together, the process probably wasn't ideal, but it was a new thing. Nobody quite knew how to do it, and it was all in a bit of a rush, and the authority was in a very different place to where it is now. Could you speak a little bit to the process for CRSTS2? How is that developing, both from an officer perspective and then from a political perspective? When will oversight of that package, when will that happen?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Wells. CRSTS2 is being developed very much with a lens and, you know, working in collaboration with Jess Lee's strategy team. So working with a lens of strategic growth, the growth plan, the local plans, working across unitary authorities to be able to go strategically where is the right transport interventions going to be needed for this region to deliver economic growth. So that's the work that's been underway. The exact timings of any submission is still being worked through, and I know there'd be, you know, there's plenty of ongoing dialogue with unitary authority officers and therefore with, you know, transport leads.
Thank you very much, Chris and Ben. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, just quickly, it's to do with the future rail strategy, and obviously from Baines we're really keen to know when and if the new station is coming for Salford. I just wondered whether when the new station's feasibility study will be reporting back, and how we can, you know, it's a chicken and egg situation here, thinking about our housing allocations and how these are taken into consideration.
We can take that away. I know the work is being undertaken with Jess Lee's team strategy, and we'll confirm back to you when that new station's feasibility study will be ready to report.
In terms of timelines.
In terms of timelines, yeah, indeed.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, that's all right. Okay. Yep.
Sorry, excuse me. Just to come back to from the political aspect, which was the second part of my question, how will the politicians from the unitary authorities be involved, and how will that happen?
Well, I would have liked to ask, but I think Stephen's going to come in.
Well, I just want to point out, and I think we've heard a lot today about it. It needs to be more strategic. So if I in my mind at least have a hierarchy, which is a mayoral election followed by a mayor looking at the latest draft of our local growth plan, which is the document, as you know, needs to be submitted at some point over the summer. That timeline keeps moving a little bit, but I think it's summer, isn't it, in classic civil service speak. So that is quite good for us because it means the new mayor with the committee will get to see that. Within which we already know transport is one of the three things that government is expecting us to major on: transport, housing and employment land are the three areas that they know this region is sort of held back. So the rail, bus, active travel narrative, shall I use that word, that we then set will need to fit within that. We also, if I'm giving too many variables, apologies, but at the same time we said we need, and this is something the improvement panel spotted, we need to have an investment strategy. So as an organization in the past, if you look at all the things we spent our money on, yes, you can retrofit a strategic narrative onto them, but it hasn't been strategy led across the board. So obviously that's not just CRSTS, that's our investment fund money and other money we get in from other sources. So all of that needs to be coalesced into a CRSTS2 package that fits underneath all of that. It's complex, it's a bit fuzzy around the edges. It absolutely needs all unitary authority politicians, committee members, portfolio leads and officers working together, because the one thing we want out of that is a strong message going out of this region to government, because we're in a competitive process. So whether it's CRSTS2, whether it's money that would otherwise go to the Oxford-Cambridge Arc or the Trans-Pennine links, we'll lose out if we don't create one strong narrative. It's a real opportunity this summer, between now and probably September, October. CRSTS, Joint Local Transport Plan, Growth Plan, Industrial Strategy, new mayor, you name it. They've all got to tally, they've all got to tie in. Other places probably are ahead of us, let's be honest. But the next 6 months is critical. So it will be under that sort of nested series of submissions, if we get the chance to do it in the order we think it should be done. Of course, if we get an email that says they need it by the 10th of May, we'll have to think again. But at the moment, I think we will probably have the chance to use CRSTS2 as an evidence point about how we're delivering the rest of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben and Chris. Thank you for all the questions there. So we're on now to the finances for the WEC committee.
I can say something quickly. I've also got James here if we've got any detailed questions on this paper, but this is our standard forecasting paper that goes to each committee with an update on where we currently are for the combined authority and also the Mayoral budget. Happy to take any questions.
I just wonder whether you could give a kind of flavour, the elevator pitch of this is where we've underspent and that this is, this is where we've overspent, or, just a sort of, because we've got some numbers there, but we haven't really got anything that gives a sort of narrative of, well, it looks like we've underspent, really.
Yeah, we have underspent. I don't, James, are you prepared for that?
No, is the honest answer. I think there are. It's pretty much across the board that there are areas of underspend and in some cases a little bit of overspend because we're delivering faster than expected. But I haven't got a detailed breakdown I can provide today. Sorry.
Thank you. And sorry, Stephen, then Councillor.
Only to point out, this is an area that we are working on right now. What is not possible to see from these reports, for example, is the extent to which some of this is underclaiming for expenditure that's been incurred, because a lot of our delivery is through, for example, unitary authority partners. The way we account for this is on a cash basis mostly, isn't it? So, so somebody might have done the work. The question is, why haven't they submitted the invoice? So I don't expect to see a revenue budget look, for example, this far out, this late in the year. I'm told that a lot of that is because the activities probably happen, but people tend to catch up with themselves. I'm coming at this from the perspective of this isn't good information yet. It needs to be made better. On capital, we have a well-publicised common problem of over-egging it and under-delivering, which again, we have to go after. But at this point in time, it's quite hard to see through because we have so much of our delivery through other parties. We need to get better at understanding what's going on at that lower level, Chair.
Thank
So
you.
it's a work in progress, I'm afraid.
Councillor Hodge, Lucy.
Yes, I just wondered, is it possible to present this information, the revenue information broken down by portfolio for the next for us to see?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that there is actually an accruals issue around not having had invoices in from the unitary authorities and recognising that there may be some liabilities sitting there with the UAs that haven't been fully financially recognised yet.
We do tend to have catch up in Q4, and it's just this does come up each year as part of our reports from Grant Thornton. But I'll be working more closely with the Section 151s from the UAs this round in this quarter to try and get this information as accurate as possible.
Okay.
But Chair, the liability is up to the level of the grant offer letter and not beyond. So whilst it's a downside issue, i.e. we're not seeing enough expenditure, the authority itself is not exposed, we believe, to extensive, actual risk. It's more a question of underreporting.
Thank you. So, unless there's any more questions on the finances, thank you very much. I just want to move on to the joint committee, and Ed, and you wanted to pick up the issue of the warm homes.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yes, please.
No.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just looking through the document concerning warm homes, and I just wanted to know if it can be fed back to that committee in regards to that paper. Firstly, what standards can be preemptively put in place to make sure that this kind of funding is really welcome, really important, to make sure that we're firstly we're tackling issues around energy efficiency, but also making sure that vulnerable people can have the costs of their energy brought down. So speaking to that, what safeguards can be preemptively put in place to make sure that this kind of funding doesn't just end up in a kind of housing association financial black hole, and that it's ring fenced and clearly allocated for making sure that the homes of vulnerable people that maybe own their own home but can't afford, possibly pensioners that have paid off a mortgage but don't have massive amount of incomes and have very need lot of modernisation. Low income households as well are properly retrofitted with windows, boilers, draft exclusion to reduce energy costs, as well as reducing carbon emissions, and some clarity on exactly what this funding can be spent on. Will it just be for housing associations to retrofit their older property stock, or can local schemes be put in place to make sure it's available, for instance, first-time buyers retrofitting older properties in terms of improving heating systems and windows?
Stephen's suggesting that Roger speaks to this. Do you need anything repeated there, Roger, or did you capture everything that Ed said?
Thank you. All good questions. So the social housing fund that we are reporting on through the committee paper is very much a government-led scheme. And so it's very kind of well-defined and very structured approach to allocating that funding. So the consortium we put forward and the proposal we've put forward works with housing associations and councils across the region. And as the paper points out, there's majority of that is in the west of England with over 5,000 homes, but 12,500 in total. So we're not sure of the actual allocation yet, as it's embargoed. But in terms of how that will be driven, that is through social housing. It isn't open more broadly. But there are a number of things we're already doing in the region that are targeting those areas. So that will really drive investment in social housing. But along with Retrofit West, the advice lines, we support also the kind of energy advice lines that support all our residents in the west of England. So those in fuel poverty, can access that advice to help to bring their bills down. And we're also working on a 0% or kind of low interest rate loan scheme that we've been talking to government about how we can bring that to the region to support those homes where people may well be in fuel poverty, and how we can support that sort of squeezed area of society. So it's very much in our thinking about how we support those homes that are fuel poor. Hopefully that covers the points.
Yeah, lovely.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Unless there are any other items, I think Dave Regwell, you wanted to mention the 18th of. Oh, sorry, Toby.
Chair, we missed an item from the main committee papers.
Ah, okay. Apologies.
It's the contract standing orders in the main.
Okay.
The main
Do you want to
committee
pick that up?
Yeah, so I have a question on that with regards to consultants who are brought into interim positions. When that happens, does the appointment of that person fall under procurement rules or under HR rules, or both? How is that handled?
Yeah, so we've got our head of commercial here, Elliot Williams, who is going to take that question.
Yeah, so very quickly, and answer that, it would fall under the procurement regs. So we would procure external consultants through that route, through some of our strategic partner frameworks. So, okay, hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you. Apologies for missing that. I think we're on then to. Is there anything you want to say to Lenza? No. I think we're on to the date of the next meeting. The 2nd of June is not fully confirmed as the date of the next meeting, because the mayoral elections will have taken place, but the AGM appointing the relevant post holders in the committee, or the relevant membership of the committee, will not yet have happened. That is happening on the 6th. So it's not absolutely firm that meeting will take place on the 2nd, but we will communicate about that, and we will be communicating earlier about work plan and adult college visits and the like. Mark?
If the date's not fully set, then might it not be easier to move it back a week? And I say that as someone with young kids, and it's half term the week before. The idea of coming back to work, then immediately coming to this meeting and going back to work, it would be logistically challenging that day. Yeah. And I just wonder whether actually bite the bullet and we just move it back a week.
Well, I as chair and Lucy as vice chair are also quite keen for it not to be then for differing reasons. So, I mean, I think if we put all that into the mix, that's what we're running with at the moment, and we'll come back and acknowledge the differing requests.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Dave. Yeah. I said, Dave said to me about a date that was available. The 18th of April is the consultation date for the rail white paper. Yeah. Just for awareness. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you.